Hey guys, it's Nina, and today I want to talk to you about Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. This book, of course, is the first book in the Dark Artifices, which is the new Cassandra Clare Shadowhunters world book. I'm not gonna say really anything about the plot because I feel like at this point you guys have already heard everything you want to hear. What I will say is that, first things first, you cannot read this book unless you have finished The Mortal Instruments and The Infernal Devices because it has massive spoilers for both of them, and also it might just not make much sense without reading them. And then also it's been recommended that you should also read the Shadowhunter Academy novellas because it does have spoilers for those. I personally did not and I was fine, but if you plan on reading those, which I've heard that you should, then it does have spoilers for them, so be warned of that. Overall, some quick non-spoilery thoughts. I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars, rounded up to a 5 on Goodreads. Of course I loved it. My only real issues with it were that A, it had some pacing issues, especially at the beginning. It took me a while to get into it. And then B, it kind of catered to the fans too much. I know that it's a very Cassandra Clare Shadowhunters book thing to do, to intertwine her books and have characters show up in other books, and that is part of the fun of them, but I just think it was a little overdone in this. Clary and Jace showed up or were mentioned just too many times for my taste, and a lot of it was in times that just didn't make sense. But other than those two things, I pretty much loved this book. The characters were definitely my favorite part about it. The characterization is on point in this book, and all the characters are just lovable and dark, and I just love them so much. And then the plot was great too, of course, because it's a Cassandra Clare novel, like how could it not? So that is all I can say that is non-spoilerly. Of course you should go read this and all the Mortal Instruments and all the Infernal Devices and come back and discuss, because I'm going to be jumping into some spoilery discussions now. So goodbye if you haven't read this yet. And I am also going to set this book down because it is massive and heavy. Sorry, not sorry. So first let's talk about the characters, because I love all the characters in this book. I found it really interesting how the characters were really similar to past Cassandra Clare characters, but at the same time they weren't. Emma is very similar to Clary in the fact that she's very strong-headed, but at the same time she's more like a female version of Jace, where she's always in the training room, she's very sarcastic, she just reminds me of Jace in so many ways. And then Julian also is kind of like the Herondale boys in that he has this scarred backstory. There's a lot of darker sides to him, but it's in a completely different way from the Herondale boys because it has nothing to do with unrequited love or bad parenting or anything like that. It's because he is the parent of so many kids, and there's just such a different dynamic but kind of similar results, so I really liked that too, how it was kind of paralleled. Okay, so let's talk about Emma first, because I love Emma so much. She is such a great, strong female lead. Emma is sarcastic and strong-headed and also physically strong and also revenge bent, and I just loved that aspect of her. I thought the characterization is so good. I just love how she's so motivated by her parents' death and that drives her, but also her connection with Julian, and I just really liked her as a character. My favorite quote from her is, "The law is annoying, but it is flexible." I was just that sums up her character perfectly, and that just fit with the whole theme of the law is hard, but it is the law. I just liked that whole theme. I love how she carries Cortana with her everywhere and always has it, and she's so badass, and I just really like Emma. So Jules is my favorite character. I love him so much. I love how he is the Herondale boys, where he's got this dark, tortured side, and he's such a good parent to all the other Blackthorn children, and just that dynamic makes my heart so warm, but then also breaks it into a million pieces, because this isn't something that most people have really talked about a lot in their reviews, because I don't think people get how much Julian has gone through. Some of my favorite parts of this were when Julian was describing taking care of his siblings as they were growing up. When they were talking about how Julian at age 12 would walk out a mile to pick up the groceries twice a week and then make 4 different meals because all of his siblings were different picky eaters. And I just can't imagine doing that for 4 little kids, and then also learning how to change Tabby's diaper and put him to bed and just take care of a 2-year-old at age 12. That is insane. I personally have a little sister who is 10 years younger than me, and I know how hard it is to play with a kid that you don't want to, or take care of a kid when you come home from school and all you want to do is crash on the couch or crash in front of the TV, and then you have this little child who wants your attention and you can't say no because they won't understand why you're saying no, because they don't know what it's like to be that tired yet, or they just don't get it. And I find it hard to do that with one little sibling, and here he is doing this successfully with 4 little children while being trained to be a shadow hunter and without the support of any adults. Like, I think Julian was a better parent than most two parents are together. Like, he did a better job than two fully adequate adults usually do. He is just the phenomenal parent, but he's also their brother, and it's just an interesting dynamic, and I just love parent Jules. I just have mad respect for him. So let's talk about Mark. Mark broke my heart probably the most out of this book. All the Mark and Julian scenes, like, broke my heart. So when Mark first comes to the Institute, I didn't see that coming at all. I had no idea Mark was even gonna be in this book. So when Mark first comes, they have the Institute scene, whatever, and then he goes to the room and he thinks they're all like mirages and he's just freaking out, and that, oh my god, it broke my soul. Julian has been waiting for his brother to come home and step in and be the older brother that he wasn't able to be, and for someone to take on some of the responsibility in the household, but instead he just gets stuck with another child who's another broken part of this family, and that was just so hard to read about. But the part that really got me is on page 177, and it's when Mark, like, realizes that Julian isn't a mirage, and he, like, hugs him, and they have their brotherly moment. And from Julian's point of view, it says, he wanted to relax into his older brother, let Mark hold him up the way he once had, but Mark was lighter than he was, fragile under his hands. He would be holding Mark up from now on. It was not what he had imagined, dreamed of, but it was the reality. It was his brother. He tightened his hands on Mark and adjusted his heart to bear the new burden. Oh my god, I, like, almost started crying when I read that, because Mark is everything that Julian has been waiting for and hoping for, that someone else will be the parent to take care of his siblings, and instead he just got another younger brother that he now has to take care of. And when he adjusts his heart to take on the new burden, I was just like, Jules, no, this is so sad, I can't. The next scene that I want to talk about with Mark is the kitchen scene, because that also broke my heart. A lot of things in this book broke my heart. I feel like most people thought this scene was funny, but I just couldn't handle it because I was picturing it from Julian's perspective, and he's seeing this kitchen that he has worked his entire life on, like, making a good thing and, like, a positive environment for these kids, and he has taken care of these kids so well, and then Mark just waltzes in, completely destroys the kitchen, and the kids are, like, having fun with Mark, and just, I felt for Julian so much during that scene, because I can't even imagine what that must have been like for him. So I found it hard to find that scene funny, which I know I should have, but I was just, like, so concerned for Julian that I just couldn't. Continuing with the theme of Mark and Julian and breaking my heart, let's talk about this whipping scene with Mark and Jules and Kiernan and Emma. And I know that scene was very cliched. It's a very, like, I love you more, let me take the bullet for you kind of setup. But I loved it so much. It was so well done. Just the way that Jules volunteered for Mark, and then I was waiting for Emma to step in because I knew there was no way she was gonna let Julian take that whip. But then he took a couple and she went in and, like, knocked him out, and then her just taking it and Mark just being so upset and then blaming himself, and again, it was so cliched, but I just loved it. It was so well done. I actually might have started crying. I mean, I wasn't actually crying. No tears left the vicinity of my eyes, but my eyes were definitely teary. Last thing about Mark. Can we talk about Mark and Kiernan? Because who saw that coming? I did not see that coming at all. When Mark told Christina to go back inside, I thought Kiernan was gonna, like, beat him up or something, and then she comes out and they're, like, making out, and I was just like, what? Like, I didn't see that at all. And then can we just take a moment to appreciate the fact that Christina walked in on Mark and Kiernan kissing, and then later on Mark walked in on Christina and Diego kissing, and I was just like, I see what you did there, Cassandra Clare. I see what you did there, and I appreciate that. So Christina, I really like Christina as a character. I loved how she was a best friend to Emma and was able to be there for her, and I think they balanced each other out very well. I loved her Mexican background and how she threw in random Spanish phrases. That was fantastic. And then Perfect Diego. I cannot believe he shot Julian, but I'm not even gonna get into that. I really loved how Emma called Perfect Diego to his face. I was just like, that is such an Emma thing to do. I loved that. That was hilarious. And then the rest of the Blackthorns. I don't have enough time to go through each of the Blackthorns individually, but this is where the strong characterization really came into play, because all of the Blackthorns are so distinct and so well characterized and stay within character, I guess. Like, they all have their personalities, they all have their weird traits and things, and they stick to it through the entire book. And that made it so much easier to follow them and keep up with the names, I guess, because that was really hard for me, because I think I had just gotten the names down by the end of the last Mortal Instruments book, but then coming back to this, all the Blackthorns are now older, so I have to readjust what they look like in my brain, and that was just so much. But the strong characterization really helped there, because they were all distinct human beings that I could see making those actual decisions in real life. And just huge props to Cassandra Clare for that, because that's really hard to do with so many characters, especially siblings, in one book. I did lie a little bit though, because I do want to talk about Ty for just a minute, because Ty, I think, has autism. I think that's what Cassie was saying in one of her Tumblr posts or something. But I just really appreciated that that one of the characters has autism, and that was a thing that she chose to include, but also that it was such, I don't want to say an issue, but that Julian didn't want him to go to the Shadowlands because he knew he wouldn't be accepted by the other Shadowhunters, and that the Shadowhunters are so old-fashioned, because we knew from the Mortal Instruments that they aren't up to date on gay marriage or mundane technology, and they're kind of slow in the times. But there's one paragraph that really stuck out to me where Jules was saying that they don't like people who are different, and they shun them, and they usually shut them out or send them away. And he was saying that there were Shadowhunters who were unusually sad, or saw letters mixed up on the page, or were unusually jumpy, and that's depression, dyslexia, ADHD, anxiety, anything like that. Shadowhunters just don't get, and they don't even have words for them because they're that old-fashioned and they don't understand it. And I just think that was a cool tidbit of Shadowhunter culture that I think will definitely come back, especially in the series with Ty. And I'm just interested to see where that goes. It just adds this whole new dynamic where Julian is going to be especially watching out for Ty, because he doesn't want him to be shunned by the other Shadowhunters, because he knows there's nothing really wrong with him, and he knows how to deal with Ty so well. And that was also just props to Julian for being able to do all that. I never would have been able to figure out the two different toy mechanisms and deal with Ty so well, but he just was amazing. I know it's a book character, but he still handled it well. So I guess I have to talk about the romance, because that is half of the book and the plot. At first, I wasn't big on the romance just because Emma was so freaking oblivious, and I just wanted to pull her aside and be look, girl, he likes you, you like him, just go for it. Because she kept having these soliloquies on how much she liked Julian as a friend or as a parabatai, and these unusual connections that they had, and all these patterns. I was just wake up. And I know most people like stuff like that, the romance, oh, they're so oblivious, but I was just come on, it's right in front of you. And then their romance evolved very quickly, but I'm not going to talk about that too much. I was just they're kissing, now they're having sex, cool, great. And can we take another moment to appreciate the fact that Clary invented a birth control rune? Just take a moment. Thank you, Clary. So the whole Parvati curse, this will be really interesting going forward, because we kind of knew that something was going on. I mean, we had that whole thing where Diego shot Julian. Nice going, Diego. And then the Iratsi, or however you pronounce it, the healing rune, healed Julian when it really shouldn't have been able to. And then we had Emma drowning and Julian spurting out salt water, and I was just okay, that is not normal. That is definitely not part of the Parvati rune. But I didn't really realize to what extent it was gonna be an issue, and when Jem explained that whole thing, I was oh, we are so screwed. This is bad. But I'm really interested to see where this goes going forward, because I still love their romance. Now that Emma and Jules do both like each other, they know it, etc., I do like the romance, of course. I love Cassie Clare romances. They're always amazing, and I ship them so hard. So before I talk about the conclusion, I just briefly want to talk about all the parallels that happened between this book and the other ones, and how they shoehorned in characters that didn't need to be there. They mentioned Clary and Jace just too many times. I am sorry. Point A is when Mark and Emma were on the motorcycle, and they were oh, this is something that Clary and Jace did. Why is this common knowledge that Jace and Clary were on a flying motorcycle? Why is this Shadowhunter lore or whatever? That doesn't make sense. And then secondly, we as fans already know that happened. We remembered them being on a motorcycle, and I was oh, this is so cool. And then Emma was this happened, and I was yes, I already knew that. You don't need to spell that out for us. We as fans are already aware of that. Secondly, when Magnus came to visit Malcolm and was giving a tidbit of information to Emma, and he just kind of came in, said stuff to Emma, and then left. and it was never explained why he was going to Malcolm in the first place. I was like, what is the point of this? There is none, to my knowledge. It just seemed like Magnus was just thrown in there so that us as fans would be happy, and not because he actually had anything to contribute to the plot in any meaningful way, because it didn't make sense why he was there at all. It just wasn't explained. And then the last parallel that I didn't like is when Malcolm uses the whole dead Downworlder army as his army. Is it just me, or is there always a possessed dark army in all of Cassandra Clare's books? Because in Clockwork Angel we have the Clockwork Army, and in the Mortal Instruments we have the Dark Shadowhunter army, which is possessed, and then in this one we have dead Downworlders who are being like brought back to life like zombie style as an army. That's just too many parallels, I'm sorry. I get that Malcolm needs an army and he can't fight all the Shadowhunters by himself, but what happened to the good old-fashioned, like, paying an army? Or, like, people who believe in the cause or something like that? Like, I'm sure they all would have fought for you if they were still alive because they were all in this cult thing that you had going on. So I just didn't get why it had to be another dead, possessed army again. So then the ending happened. I don't have much to say about it. It was badass, kick-ass. I liked it. The last thing that I want to talk about is Julian with Nightshade, because this is something that kind of scared me. I know that some people have been saying that Julian was really dark throughout the entire book and that his character scared them the entire time, but I really wasn't concerned until the end when he, like, gave up Nightshade and sold him out, basically. Even the part with Julian and Arthur, I didn't really see that as an issue. He was doing what he needed to help his family, and he was like, oh, you guys are gonna think I'm a horrible human being, you're never gonna trust me ever again. I was like, dude, get over yourself. But the thing with Nightshade, I was like, that was so dark. Why did he do that? Nightshade is completely uninvolved in all of this. Nightshade did nothing wrong. I mean, technically he did, but spiking some pizzas is not enough to get him in trouble with the Clave. It's completely unwarranted. And just the fact that Julian so easily gave him up and gave him to the Clave was just very concerning. And I'm not sure if that's just part of Julian's character or if that's him turning dark already, because I think it's already starting to happen with Julian, this whole curse and like destroying people around them. Like maybe Nightshade is the first piece in that puzzle and then it's just everything's gonna go to hell. And I also am not excited to see how Julian reacts to Mark and Emma doing this whole fake dating thing. I am not excited to read that. I mean, okay, let's be honest, I am very excited to read that, but it's going to be very heartbreaking again because I love Julian. So I think that's all the rambling that I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, you can give it a big thumbs up and subscribe, and let me know down below what you guys thought of this book, of course, and I'll see you guys later with another video. Bye!